Continuing on with the story. Despite the fact that all the philosophies I had examined clearly indicated that every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage, I must confess that I had not the slightest idea how this affliction could ever become an asset. However, I continued my practice of wrapping that philosophy in bedtime stories, hoping the time would come when he would find some plan by which his handicap could be made to serve some useful purpose. Reason told me plainly that there was no adequate compensation for the lack of ears and natural hearing equipment. Desire, backed by faith, pushed reason aside, inspired me to carry on. As I analyzed the experience in retrospect, I can see now that my son's faith in me had much to do with the astounding results. He did not question anything I told him. I sold him the idea that he had a distinct advantage over his older brother, and that this advantage would reflect itself in many ways. For example, the teachers in school would observe that he had no ears, and because of this, they would show him special attention and treat him with extraordinary kindness. They always did. His mother saw to that by visiting the teachers and arranging with them to give the child the extra attention necessary. I sold him the idea, too, that when he became old enough to sell newspapers, his older brother had already become a newspaper merchant. He would have a big advantage over his brother, as people would pay him extra money for his wares because they could see he was a bright, industrious boy, despite the fact he had no ears. We noticed that gradually the child's hearing was improving. Moreover, he had not the slightest tendency to be the self-conscious because of his affliction. When he was about 7, he showed the first evidence that our method of servicing his mind was bearing fruit. For several months he begged for the privilege of selling newspapers, but his mother would not give her consent. She was afraid that his deafness made it unsafe for him to go out on the streets alone. Finally, he took matters into his own hands. One afternoon, when he was left at the home with the servants, he climbed through the kitchen window, shimmied down to the ground to set out to his own. He borrowed 6 cents in capital from the neighborhood shoemaker, invested it in papers, sold out, reinvested, and kept repeating until late in the evening. After balancing account and paying back the 6 cents he had borrowed from the banker, he had a net profit of 42 cents. When he got home that night, it found him in his bed asleep with the money tightly clenched in his hand. His mother opened his hand, removed the coins, cried. Of all things, crying over her son's first victory seemed so inappropriate. My reactions were the reverse. I laughed heartily, for I knew that my endeavor to plant the child's mind an attitude of faith in himself has been successful. His mother saw in his first business venture a little deaf boy gone out on the streets and risked his life to earn money. I saw a brave, ambitious, self-reliant little businessman whose stock in himself has increased 100% because he had gone into business on his own initiative and had won. The transaction pleased me because I knew he had given evidence of a trait of resourcefulness that will go well with him all throughout life. Later events proved this to be true. When his older brother wanted something, he would lie down on the floor, kick his feet in the air, and cry for him to get it. When the little deaf boy wanted something, he would plan a way to earn the money, then buy it for himself. He still follows that plan. Truly, my own son has taught me that handicaps can be converted into stepping stones on which one may climb through some worthy goals, unless they are accepted as obstacles and used as alibis. The little deaf boy went through the grades, high school, and college without being able to hear his teachers except when they shouted loudly at close range. He did not go to school for the deaf. He would not permit him to learn sign language. We were determined that he should live a normal life and associate with normal children, and we stood by that decision, although it cost us many heated debates with school officials. While he was in high school, he tried an electrical hearing aid, but it was of no value to him. We believe this was due to the combination that was disclosed when the child was 6. Dr. J. Gordon Wilson of Chicago operated outside of the boy's head and discovered that there was no signs of natural hearing equipment. During his last week in college, 18 years after operation, something happened which marked the most important turning point of his life. Through what seemed to be mere chance, he came into possession of another electrical hearing device, which was sent to him on trial. He was slow about testing it due to his disappointment with a similar device. Finally, he picked the instrument up, more or less carelessly placed it on his head, hooked it up to the battery, and lo, by the stroke of magic, his lifelong desire for normal hearing became a reality. For the first time in his life, he had practically as well as any person with normal hearing. God moves in mysterious ways. His wonders to perform, overjoyed because of the changed world he had been brought to him through his hearing device. He rushed to the telephone, called his mother, heard her voice perfectly. The next day, he plainly heard the voices of his professors in his class for the first time in his life. He heard the radio. He heard the cinema for the first time in his life. He could converse freely with other people without having to speak loudly. Truly, he could come into possession of a changed world. We had refused to accept nature's error, and by persistent desire, we had induced nature to correct that error through the only practical means available. Desire had commenced to pay dividends, but the victory was not yet complete. The boy still had to find a definite and practical way to convert his handicap into an equivalent asset. Hardly realizing the significance of what he already had accomplished, but intoxicated with the joy of his newly discovered world of sound, he wrote a letter to the manufacturer of the hearing aid, enthusiastically describing his experiences. Something in the letter, something perhaps which was not written on the line, but between them, caused the company to invite him to New York. When he arrived, he was escorted through the factory while talking to the chief engineer, telling him about his changed world. A hunch, an idea, or an inspiration, call it what you wish, flashed into his mind. It was this impulse of thought which converted his affliction into an asset destined to pay dividends in both money and happiness to thousands for all to come. The sum and substance of that impulse of thought was this. It occurred to him that he might be the help to the millions of deaf people who go through life without the benefit of hearing devices. If he could find a way to tell them the story of his changed world, then and there he reached a decision to devote the remainder of his life to providing a useful service to the hard of hearing. For an entire month, he carried out intensive research. He analyzed the entire marketing system of the manufacturer of the hearing device, created ways and means of communicating with the hard of hearing all over the world for the purpose of sharing with them his newly discovered changed world. When this was done, he wrote a 2-year plan based upon his findings. On presenting the plan to the company, he was instantly given a position for the purpose of carrying out his ambitions. Little did he dream when he went to work that he was destined to bring hope and practical relief to thousands of deaf people who, without his help, would have been doomed forever to deaf mutism. Shortly after he became associated with the manufacturer of the hearing aid, he invited me to attend a class conducted by his company for the purpose of teaching deaf mutes to hear and speak. I have never heard of such a form of education. Therefore, I visited the class skeptical but hopeful that my time would not be entirely wasted. Here I saw a demonstration that gave me a greatly enlarged vision of what I had done to arouse and keep alive in my son's mind the desire for normal hearing. I saw deaf mutes actually being taught to hear and speak through applications of the self-same principle I had used more than 20 years previously in saving my son from deaf mutism. That's deep, man. Like, that's dope shit. Like, for real. Like, I think that's a very inspiring, like, through his life, just by telling his son, just speaking into a non-ear. Boy, you're gonna hear one day. It's gonna be fabulous, son. You're gonna hear.